Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Emily Cash with the FreightWaves media team, and I'm happy to present this webinar in partnership with Tomorrow.io. Today, you'll be hearing how leading trucking companies are empowering drivers to adapt to hazardous weather conditions and save $1 million each year in the process. I'm happy to be joined by the Tomorrow.io team, Ayala Radoy, Vice President and General Manager of Transportation, and Kelly Peters, Director of Marketing. We'll also have a live Q&A following the discussion, so make sure to have your questions ready for them. First, before we get started, I'd like to cover just a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any issues during the webinar, please feel free to reach out to our team via the audience chat function in your webinar console. And if you have questions that you would like to ask our speakers, please enter those in the Q&A box in your console, and we will answer as many of those as possible during live audience Q&A following the presentation. We'll also be sending over a link to the recording of this webinar tomorrow in case you'd like to view it on demand or share it with your colleagues. At this point, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our presenters to kick off today's discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Emily, and hello, everyone. We are so happy to have you joining us today and to be here speaking with the FreightWaves audience again. We're going to be talking about, as Emily mentioned, a really important topic going into 2023, the number one safety risk that you can't overlook going into this new year. So to kick things off, I will just give you a preview of where we're headed. So we will introduce ourselves a little bit more, and then we'll talk about the problem at hand. So the threat that we are facing and the cost of it, and that number one threat is the weather that we'll be focusing on today. And then we'll tell you how fleets are actually adapting. What is it that they're doing right now in a really actionable way for you? And then lastly, building on that, what can you do to actually take away, leave here, take things back to your team, move forward in 2023, adapting to the weather at scale. And one thing not listed here on the agenda is going to be, of course, the semifinals going on right now, also of the World Cup. So we promise to try to get you maybe a score update if we can at the end there too. But we appreciate you being here, and we're excited to talk about this. Okay, great. So just a little bit more about us. My name is Kelly Peters, as Emily mentioned. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Tomorrow, and I'm joined today by the wonderful Ayala Radoy, who is heads up our transportation division here. So Ayala, if you want to say hello.
Sure. Hey, everyone. Thank you for joining. I'm excited to be here. I've been featured on Weather Truck, and we've been featured on FreightWaves before, but this is our first webinar, so we're very excited to have it here on the FreightWaves platform. And hopefully, during the time with us, you'll learn more about what we know from talking to multiple carriers and private fleet safety operations manager around how weather and other safety risks are impacting their day-to-day, and what can you do about it?
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. So we will dive on in. So, speaking of other safety risks, before we get to the number one threat that we're focused on today, I want to just set the stage here. So we know from talking to other carriers, other private fleets right now, that if you're in safety, you are getting threats from all sides. So we don't want to ignore this fact that there are more than one threat, of course, and there are a lot of things that you're juggling. Just the sheer volume that we hear about out in the market right now, you have a lot on your plate. And so we know that it comes all the way from other drivers. Your drivers are professionals, but non-professional drivers who are distracted out there on the road. Major safety risk, major thing on your mind, we're sure. People who are putting on makeup, as you can see here, impressive photo, putting on makeup, drinking coffee, eating, while they are also supposed to be focused on the most important thing at hand, of course, driving. So that's a major safety threat that we hear about. Fatigue, just drivers being on the road for long hours, needing to make that delivery on time. Aging infrastructure, so just road conditions, especially right now in North America, winter. We know the roads themselves are a major risk. So just a snapshot here, but to set the stage, we realize there's a lot coming at you, and you're juggling a lot in your day-to-day in your role, just thinking of many different threats. So with that in mind, though, what we want to talk about today is that there's one major threat as the common denominator here under all of those that we've talked about. And Ayala, this is where I'd love to pass it to you to hear more about that and why it is the number one.
Sure. So we're here to talk about the weather. Has been out there even before trucking, if you can believe it. And it seems like because it's something that was always happening, and it's something we take as granted, it's the weather. It never became a priority. There wasn't a solution in place. And so all these new threats that are coming up that Kelly just mentioned have took priority, and solutions were developed to tackle them. But because weather was always there, it wasn't really something that people were trying to solve. It's always easy, or it was always easy to blame the weather. So I think everyone, especially here, but in general, realizes that it's a problem. It's a huge safety risk. And unlike most of the other threats that are out there, it has nothing to do with us. It's out there. But if we have systems in place, it is something we're able to solve, or at least mitigate the impact it has on our business.
Perfect transition, exactly. And before we get to that solution, which we're excited to tell you about, we want to first talk about, what are the weather impacts here? So Ayala, I don't know if you want to mention anything here before we ask them about their own opinion, but what exactly are the impacts that you're seeing that we're hearing about?
Sure. So we talk a lot with carriers and with private fleets, and they all tell us that the impact is significant. It can be anything from delays, operational efficiency, accidents, casualties, a lot of things that are unpredictable, but the impact they have are major.
Right. Yeah, and so let's first, before we tell you more, I guess, hear from you. We're really curious. Can you rank for us, how is weather impacting your fleet right now, your operations in order of importance? So curious to hear first, is it driver safety, route planning, resource efficiency relating to things like fuel, for example, customer satisfaction, or something else? So we'll give a minute or two there.
Just curious, Kelly, what would you think the audience would, as a whole, would pick?
Yeah, I would say that our gut is that safety, driver safety specifically, is going to be the top priority. And I think that's what we're seeing as I go over here. Yep. Absolutely. So by far, looks like driver safety is your top concern. And that's no shock to us. I'd say closely followed by route planning here. So Ayala, if you have any comments on these results, or want to dive into why safety is so challenging, I think that's where we can start.
No, I think if I had to guess, I would probably guess something similar. We'll talk about driver safety, but route planning and customer satisfaction are definitely, things that are impacted significantly by the weather.
Definitely.
Awesome.
And on the safety side, to dive in here, this is kind of what we were expecting, I think. So Ayala, can you kind of give us a summary of weather impact for safety, and then we'll get into specifics?
Sure. So we see that in general, there are a lot of trucking related accidents. And I do think it's important when we talk about this problem to distinguish between trucking related weather accidents and private vehicles, because we all know with trucking, we're talking about professional drivers. But what we're going to see is that there are two types of things that would cause the professional driver to be at a higher risk. One is because they know how to drive it. They might not expect that everyone around them would not. And so that's one thing that we need to take into account. And the second thing is that some weather conditions are surprising. And so if they're not expecting it, if they're driving in the sun, it might be extremely dangerous because they might be overly confident. I would say that currently we know on a rough estimation that 25% out of all accidents are caused by weather, but this is a metric that is an outcome of a research that was done across all types of transportation. And I can say that hopefully Very soon you'll see a research that is geared more towards trucking, because we do believe and assume that the number for trucking is a bit lower, but still significant enough.
Definitely. You already touched on these a little bit, but do you want to go in a little bit more deeply about like the specifics of the conditions that would be impacting kind of the nitty gritty here of the weather?
Yeah, sure. So I think when we talk to our customers, to our prospects, the private fleets, the carriers, brokers about weather conditions, the first thing that comes to mind is the major events, the hurricanes that are really disrupting and shutting down an entire network. But I do want to say and give compliments that the industry is doing a pretty good job handling the hurricanes. Where we see more issues is with a few other conditions. So I think the main one is when conditions are changing really, really quickly. We call it pop-up storms, or it's a sudden wind gust. Usually it's coming with a pop-up storm. And so you can drive in the sun, it's all clear, and all of a sudden it moves really, really quickly. There's a system, and if you're empty, you're getting blown over. If there's really intense rain, it impairs your visibility. That brings me to the second situation, which sometimes drivers do not expect, which is low visibility, which can really, really impact their ability to drive. It can be caused by fog, but also by a very small cell of extremely intense snow or rain or freezing rain. I'll say the third one, which we see a lot, and we've seen a lot of footage from our customer, is when the road is slippery, when there's reduced road traction. And if the truck driver is not aware, he might come too quickly. And what you see in the forward-facing cameras is the truck is kind of going between the lanes, going off the lanes. And it only takes, one alert or one piece of information to allow the driver to know that the road ahead is wet and that he should adjust his speed. So there's more, but I think these are kind of the main ones where we see a lot of incidents happening.
Definitely. That was a good summary. Some of them, to be honest, I didn't even quite realize the specifics there. And I suspect the same will be true here. Can you talk about beyond safety? What are maybe some of the hidden costs that the industry is incurring as a result of weather?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because I think something that we see more often than not is that it's hard for companies to actually quantify it, or they're not looking at everything that is impacted by weather. So some of the items here are pretty clear to everyone that are joining us today. I assume accidents, insurance premium, and so on. But some of the things I think can be really substantial, and they're overlooked. So when you are taking weather into account, or let's say when you're not taking weather into account, you lose a lot of capacity. You pay for time or for not having enough capacity because your drivers are stuck in weather, or they weren't able to reroute on time. They went over their hour of service before they finished the load, before they delivered it. So, labor time, capacity can be a major cost associated with the weather. Fuel cost is similar. If you're running into weather, if you're not stuck, but just everything slows down and it takes you a lot more time to get to your destination, or you need to take a very inefficient reroute because you just want to get home, or you're looking for a place to park your vehicle, it comes with a lot of fuel consumption that was not necessarily planned ahead or billed to the customer or taken into account. Two more things that I want to mention is how customers are reacting to this. I think what we see more often now is that customers tend to be less patient about the weather. So because weather has become so volatile and it happens so much, it disrupts some of the businesses in such a level that they are less empathic to the situation, and they do tend to start and expect some solutions in place. So customers might churn, but if you do take weather into account, you're going to earn multiple credits with your customers, or with your own, if you're a private fleet, with the distribution centers, with the stores, just by letting them know ahead of time what they can expect and setting expectations. And they can do the same from an operational perspective, staff correctly and plan ahead. And there's also the piece of driver attention. It was a hot topic in the last few months on the driver shortage, but I think everyone knows how expensive it is to onboard or hire a new driver, but you really don't want to lose your safe drivers, your leading drivers that would be the first ones to care if you end up sending them into a storm and not checking this in advance, or showing the drivers that you have put resources, you do care about their safety, and it's not just tools to ensure that they drive correctly, but also what's around them.
Definitely. And again, similar to the safety risks, things that I personally didn't even quite realize, and needless to say, to reiterate, like costs that you may not even realize are related to weather. Is that right, Ayla? That ultimately are being inflated from all of these conditions that we talked about.
100%.
So definitely significant, I think, is the takeaway, no doubt. It's clear, no denying it, the impact of weather. What we want to talk about now is why is this such a challenge? You all are aware of this. You all are professionals. You're innovative. You're hardworking. You're doing your jobs day in and day out. You know that weather is a problem. It's not an awareness issue. What we have found, and the reason that we have built what we've built, is that you're basically set up to play a game that you can't win. So you're not set up for success. And the reason it's a challenge is that you just simply don't have the right tools that you need to mitigate these impacts at scale. So we have a number of reasons here I think are really important to first cover before we then show you the solution to them. And so, Ayla, can you kind of take us through some of these bullets here and tell us why is this that the trucking industry is playing this game they simply can't win?
Yeah, of course. I think that's my favorite part when I'm talking to people from the industry, because like we mentioned, weather has always been out there, but it seems that there are very few companies that try to tackle this directly. I would like to compliment the industry. Some of the technology providers out there have put or tried to put some solutions out there to solve for this, but the problem was they weren't weather centric. They're not weather companies. They're technology companies that are solving for other problems. And so what they were able to put out there is just the, repackaged governmental data, the severe weather alerts coming from the National Weather Service. And while these are great alerts for public safety, they're not geared towards the transportation industry, and they're not really actionable. The way it works is it's a county level alert. And everyone here knows that even if you get, and I'll show you later, a winter weather storm alert or any other alert, even winds alert, that closes an entire state, you're not really going to shut down operations in this state for the next 2 days just because of this alert. You might tell the drivers, but it's not really actionable. So the first problem, the underlying problem, is just having too generic, too regional data that is not really operational. The second thing is, even if you had the most hyperlocal granular data available to you, it is impossible to do it manually, to go load by load, look at every point along the route and try to figure out what's going to be the weather when the truck is expected to be there. And keep in mind, this is the weather. So even if you looked a day before, on all your thousands of routes planned for tomorrow or for today, weather might change, the forecast might change. So it's impossible to take all of this into account. And also the fact that we don't really know when the driver is going to take a break or if he's going to run into traffic. So the ability to check for the weather and identify these risks in a way that would be operational with the scale that transportation has is literally impossible. And with that, I'll say, even if that was possible, not having the tools to understand what weather means for the truck, the ability to actually translate it, operationalize the data, makes it a real problem. And so 40 miles per hour for a full truck is probably, winds, they're probably, it's probably a meaningless type of data. for an empty truck, it can cause a blowover. I would also say that an half an inch of snow in Texas might be extremely dangerous, whereas in Michigan, no one would care about it. And the drivers there, not the truck drivers, but the drivers around the trucks would know how to handle that. The infrastructure is ready for it. So the ability to really understand what that means, if this is severe, do you need to slow down or not? Does this a specific intensity over a specific time frame, does that mean you need to slow down? Maybe you need to pull over. Maybe it's just about taking a break. So the ability to actually understand what the weather means for you is also key, because at the end, it's all about making decisions at the right time. And without translating it, if you just send the driver or the safety manager, the dispatcher, the raw weather data, he's going to start figuring it out on his own. And that's also not only not scalable, but not the way any enterprise wants to operate. Two more things I'll say is, one, there's real inability to communicate when you're in charge of multiple trucks. The ability to identify these alerts and manually contact every single driver on time or send a message to every single one of them at the right time with the right message is also an impossible mission. And the last thing I'll say, that's probably the only thing that is not impossible, but it's a heavy lift, is even the companies who are at the forefront and are more innovative and are taking weather very seriously and have put some system in place, it's usually given to the safety team, and it creates a lot of pressure on them. It's not their day job. They have a full agenda that they need to go through in addition to the weather. So not only you're not able to utilize them for ensuring the safety of their drivers with all of the other risks that we mentioned, and probably there are more, you're also putting a lot of pressure on these people to try and basically crack an impossible mission.
Mission impossible. I think that's the takeaway from this slide, is really, though, the word impossible. You're not set up for success for all of these reasons. There hasn't been the right solution on the market. And on top of all of these things that Ayala just mentioned, we also know that, in fact, everyday weather is becoming more extreme. So alongside a changing climate, extreme weather disasters, we know, I think this stat is crazy to me, that billion-dollar weather disasters are now happening every 18 days. And beyond like hurricanes, as Ayala mentioned, or that you see there, it also is just everyday weather is becoming more volatile. So it's the heavy rains, the winds that pose the blowover risks, all of that then impacting fuel and those hidden costs we talked about. Everything that we've covered now is only further exacerbated and made more important by this more extreme weather. And so going into 2023, this certainly is top of mind for all industries, definitely transportation being one of them. So we're curious, after reviewing all of this and talking through hidden costs, safety risks, the problem with current solution or lack thereof, want to hear from you all again. How many of your safety incidents roughly each year would you estimate are related to weather? And when we say safety incidents, accidents certainly being one of those such incidents, but beyond that, it could be a driver getting stuck somewhere because you didn't know about a pop-up storm, a driver driving over their allotted time or driving too far, or even just a driver not feeling confident or safe based on road conditions. So I'll give you a couple of seconds here, but just curious, after we've reviewed everything, what you're thinking right now about number of safety incidents. Okay. Click over. Got it. So we can see right now, so it's about 0 to 10 is the ultimate, but interestingly, the other side of this is the other extreme. We wondered how this would play. So this is really interesting. It's like one of two extremes here, over 100. I think what we'd say is, like, even though the majority here is between 0 and 10, even one of these incidents can, one, be costly if it's one of those hidden costs, but also if it's an accident, God forbid, it impacts someone's life, or also tarnishes your reputation as an organization. So that's how I would interpret these results. I don't know, Ayala, if you want to say anything else.
I think it also depends on how folks define this. I do want to say kudos. If you only have, one or two each year, you're probably doing an awesome job already. Hopefully, you'll learn something new. But as you mentioned, the cost of one is major. What we see typically is that even if it's not in the hundreds, it does create significant impact. So every time a driver gets stuck, every time there's a delay, every time there's an incident, it doesn't need to be major. The costs are usually between tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars for each one.
Definitely. Okay, so we are on to the most exciting part, which is now that we've talked about all of the risks, all of the things that you all juggle every single day, how is it that you could be adapting and that other leaders like you are adapting? And so I'll pass it to you, but we'll be talking about that solution that we've been alluding to this whole time.
Sure. As we talked about later, or as I tried to tease, I don't know if I gave too much, we are very proud to introduce the first industry-specific weather intelligence solution. So all the problems that we've mentioned before and why this is impossible, we are tackling and we are solving. And we worked really hard to build something that is not only innovative and would solve the problem, but would solve the problem specifically for the transportation industry. So really quickly, we are a weather company. We run proprietary high-resolution models, 1 kilometer square resolutions that are updated every few minutes. So we take, the part of the granularity out of the way. We then built a weather intelligence engine, and it is adjusted now to accommodate for specific insights that are relevant for the transportation industry. It's fully customized, and it allows every company that we work with to actually build their own weather playbook, one single source of truth and one single playbook that would basically create the thumb rules for every situation, what to do, and how to keep safe. So we're able, and you'll see it a bit later, but we're able to take multiple weather conditions, sophisticated conditions, and incorporate them into business rules or into decision-making rules. And I think the most important thing is also our ability to actually support the integrations needed and the solution needed to cater for the industry. And this is something we realized once we started to actually talk with customers from this industry. So the ability to really adjust the weather alerts or information to moving assets is pretty unique, because if we give you the hyperlocal data on all the roads, but it's not tied to specific trucks that are out there, it's gonna be really, really hard to start and match which weather condition would impact each, which truck, and alert the driver on time. So by actually integrating with all the ELD solutions that are out there, we're able to match these weather conditions against each specific truck's location and where they're headed towards, and alert the drivers and the safety teams exactly at the time they need to be able to mitigate the situation. We can't help you to take the weather away, but we can help you create a situation where the driver is informed on what he needs to do to avoid any significant issue and stay ahead of these quick changing conditions. So yeah, we're very, very excited about it, because we believe it is exactly the solution that would solve for that. And other than us being a technology company, the mission and the ability to really impact safety in a significant way is really, really exciting.
Definitely. And can you give us, a sense of results here? We've talked a little bit about it, but if I'm new to this technology, I just start using weather intelligence, specifically real-time monitoring, what could I expect to see as a result with my fleet right out of the gate?
Sure. So I think the first thing you'll see is that it's a lot easier. The first thing that customers that work with us say is, oh my God, we don't need to spend hours and hours trying to figure out where's the weather, how it matches where the fleet is, trying to figure out which drivers is at risk and so on. So first of all, it's automating a very manual process if there is one. And the second immediate thing that you see is the ability to not let anything slip between the cracks. Because even if you put 60 people, given that you have a sizable fleet, it's not going to be enough, and things are going to be slipping through. Not necessarily because you're not looking at all of your trucks, but only because the weather is changing so fast. And so the ability to, like, let's say, pick up a pop-up storm and alert the driver on time is really, really challenging. And once you put a system that fully automates this, things are not slipping through. So the immediate impact is a calmer safety team, a lot more time, that has more time to do other things that are as important as handling the weather, and the ability to be more confident that things are not slipping through. In addition, I'll say that drivers, and this is something that we weren't sure about. We hear drivers that are not necessarily happy about some of the new technologies that are out there. They have a lot of criticism and things to say, but luckily we had a chance to talk to multiple drivers during the annual Trucking Association conference this year, and hear from them that this is something they would love to have. They each had at least one or two stories about how by chance they got away from a severe condition or getting stuck on the road for days just because someone picked up a situation, and it could have ended completely differently. And so we got a full positive notion on, oh, this is the kind of alerts that I want, because this would actually help me go back home safe every day and potentially on time. And I don't need to be so stressed that I'm going to run into something that I wasn't aware of. So that's from a driver perspective. And I think the last thing I'll say is that the high level impact is obviously less accidents, a lot more efficiency, gained capacity. And so it's not only safety teams that are enjoying it, it's your customers, your distribution centers, the stores, and as a result, the management of the companies we're working with.
Well said. Yeah, love hearing all of those things, and especially the driver reaction, that what it's all about, them getting home safely every night. We love hearing those stories, yeah. So we've talked about this a lot. Now we are going to actually see it. So we are going to dive in and see the real-time monitoring that Ayala just spoke about. So we'll go ahead and have Ayala share her screen.
Sure.
And yeah, while she's getting that up too, I'll give everyone an exciting update that it is still 0-0 on the semifinals. So no need to go check that. We'll stay focused here on the real-time monitoring because it's a slow game. Perfect.
So hopefully you can see my screen now.
We can.
So I'm about to just give you a really quick glimpse. I believe Emily is going to share links to a more deep dive demo that we uploaded. And I would encourage any of you, if this is something that might be relevant for you or your business, or just if you want to learn more and you're excited about weather in general, we're happy to do a deep dive. There's always new features that are coming out and new things that we're adding. But I just wanted to give you kind of the visual on how that looks like. Keep in mind, this is a demo environment. The trucks are not actually moving, but the weather is real. This is our platform. So essentially what you see here is we ingest the trucks from your ELDs. We're agnostic to which ELD you're using as long as they have an API, which the majority of them do. And so we overlay all the trucks on the map, and we would help you set the business rules, the insights that you care about. And an insight can be, as you can see at the bottom of the screen, can be pull overloads, extremely low visibility, block roads risk, heavy snow. It can be, extreme high wind alerts, and we can help you define the severity. So the colors that you can see here, if I'm now filtering to only impacted trucks, you can see that some of the trucks are, with this red and some are yellow. Obviously, that basically shows you the severity. And so a truck that is red you might want to send an alert that they should consider pulling over or significantly reduce their speed or maybe taking a break. Whereas the yellow ones, you just want to say adjust for conditions, the speed, be aware. So if I zoom in here and I click on the truck, you can see exactly why it's red. There are multiple weather conditions that are impacting it. As you can see, it's in the middle of the storm right now. We allow you to generate for the dispatch team a list of all the trucks that are at risk, depending on where they're headed. You can always export it to CSV. But we also have the ability to kind of filter and create different views for different safety managers or operations managers, depending on which trucks they're responsible for. Once you click on the truck, obviously you'll see the driver's name, the truck ID, all the information that you need in order to be informed and potentially make a decision. And this all comes with alerts to the drivers, which if you want to see how that works, we're happy to show it to you in a different session. But that would be through multiple options, through the driver's tablet, or if the ELD device allows it, and other options that we have. So just wanted to give you a glimpse. The idea is to really automate the weather alerting and identifying which trucks are at risk based on the everlasting changing weather conditions, and really allow you to customize these rules, because we are aware, if it's a retailer, private fleet, if you're a broker, or if you're a carrier, if you're even types of carrier, if you drive reefers over the road or just final mile, you'd care about different conditions and different alerting, and the ability to, as mentioned, alert about snow, different types of, snow accumulation in Texas versus Michigan or Boston and other areas, and the same with heat, etc. So this is the glimpse. And
yeah, I was just going to reiterate, as Kyla mentioned, what you see right now, very much a glimpse. Hopefully you see the value in it. But we also have definitely, like she said, Emily has provided different resources that you could see a fuller look, or we're always happy to give you a custom walkthrough. So just a glimpse, but thank you so much for taking us through that, Ayala. It's always incredible to see the actual movement and impact of the trucks right there on the map. So I think that was great. We could see that. Okay, so we are going to move on to our Q&A. We have gotten some great questions as we've gone. Thank you everyone for participating and asking. So we'll go ahead and go through those right now. So Ayala, I think to start out, someone says, this is so exciting that this exists. Why is it maybe that we haven't heard of this before and that more fleets aren't already using this, essentially amazing solution that we didn't realize was out there?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I do want to say, first and foremost, Tomorrow has been around for 6 years. We're working with, Fortune companies, from aviation to sports, the NFL, US Open, even the World Cup is a customer of ours. We work with the US Air Force. We've really been focusing with an entire team, from go-to-market to product to engineering, on the transportation business in the past year or so. This is our first winter live with customers with this solution. And there's so much more that is coming. I'm really excited about it. But I think the first reason is because it's new. I think the second reason, and we saw some example of this from the aviation world, but I think very soon it's going to be very clear to companies who haven't put systems in place that they cannot blame the weather anymore. Because if they do, they'll get the answer, oh, but these companies, they didn't get into these weather situations. How come? And the answer is going to be, they have a solution in place. So should you. So I think, like every new technology, the early adopters have have the upper end and getting all the benefits early and being able to impact how the solution is being built. And at this point, I think we're seeing that more people are hearing about the benefits and how it can help, both the business and the safety, and they're quickly adopting.
Love it. And similar, related to that, so can you give us a preview of maybe what is next from a product perspective? What could folks expect to see coming out, the latest and greatest in the Tomorrow.io fleet offering?
Sure. So I don't want to reveal everything, but I would say there are a lot of exciting things that we're going to announce very, very soon. Some are related to the driver's alert and our partnerships with some of the providers out there that are already in the truck. Some relates to more sophisticated things that are coming up later, like taking into account hours of service, taking into account the navigational route. We are about to announce the ability to actually click on a truck and see the camera feed. So if a driver is reporting something and you want to get a sense of what's happening, you'll be able to do it in a click of a button really, really quickly. So these are just some of the things, but there's a lot more, and hopefully we'll share it later this year on FreightWaves.
Exactly. Yeah. Stay tuned for all of that. Some of those features that you mentioned and the whole product, how long could you expect to get up and running? If you're starting today with weather intelligence, you've never heard of it before, you're signing on, what do you expect?
So I would say that usually the process is within a month or three, depending on whether or not you already had, some rules, some solutions, some systems in place, then we can get you up and running within less than a month. If weather, not weather as a whole, but if having a process around weather is completely new, it might take a bit longer, but 1 to 3 months is usually the average. We help with onboarding. We help you to, we give you templates and out of the box recommendations on, which alerts you should have in place and which not, and learn really, each of our customers' specific business and business needs. A retailer or a pharmaceutical company might have different needs than a reefer or a flatbed. So with all of that in mind, we would give, our expert recommendation and help you build it. From the technical perspective, it's a pretty easy lift on our side to just digest all the truck's location and send the alerts.
And it doesn't really require too much, like, to be clear, IT hand-holding or help on the IT side, correct?
So for what we talked about today, which is identifying trucks that are headed towards weather and alerting them, that doesn't require a lot of IT at all.
Got it. Yeah, just wanted to clarify. That's good to hear. Let's see. I'm going through our questions. Some really good ones here. We talked about ELDs. One for you, Ayala. Any thoughts or messages you would want to give to on the broker side? So for brokers, anything they should be thinking about to make sure that they're helping safety, empowering these folks we're talking to today, and kind of working cross-functionally, so to speak. Any message for them, I guess?
I think that's a really interesting question, because brokers can really, they don't have a direct line into the drivers. However, they care about, ETAs and getting to the customers on time, but they also care about how much they're billing their customers and about the mileage. So I think the main thing that they need to be aware of is major impacts and communicating it early and being more proactive, even before dispatch. I think that's where brokers can help the most, is before dispatch, being able to communicate with the customers, letting them know what to expect, potentially helping them make smarter decisions. And I would say that in real time, maybe kind of brokering the message to the customers that this carrier, or, from a broker perspective, the carrier cares about the safety of both the load and the driver. And so they have a weather solution in place. And if there is a delay, the customer needs to know that it's because this is a good carrier. It's a safety first carrier that would never put anything at risk. If it's a dedicated fleet, even more. So just maybe making it something that is an advantage, communicating to customers that they should look for these carriers, especially during the winter, even, the spring months when all the pop-up storms are becoming more often. If they want to ensure operational efficiency, both from the ETA side, but also from a cost perspective, they should prioritize fleets that are taking weather into account in a proactive manner. I think that's probably the best thing that they can do.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a really great question, as all of them were. I think that was the last one we actually had. So thank you all so much on my end. Really appreciate it. And I'll really appreciate always learning from you about what we're hearing out there. Sounds like, the summary here is can't blame the weather anymore. There is a solution. We'd love to hear from you if you have any questions. Ayala, anything that you'd like to add before we pass it back to Emily?
No, I see another question about the ELDs and
please.
them. So I just want to say we are working closely with all the leading ELDs, or with most of them. I don't want to say all of them, but with most of them, to really, again, make it seamless, either through the tablet or the ELD itself. So it's a click of a button, but I think they all understand that the only way to solve this properly in a way that would be impactful is by a weather company. And so I'm very happy and proud to say that we've been getting very positive response from everyone. Everyone knows it's a problem. Everyone, we're thinking about how can they solve it. They all came up with the same, underlying issues on why it couldn't be solved yet. And they're happy to collaborate and help us get it to market in a click of a button, hopefully.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd missed that one. Glad that you saw it. Well, yeah, if anyone has questions, please don't hesitate to reach out is the answer on our side. And we can't wait to see you again and tell you more about our offering and other things that you should be thinking about with the weather. So I think that's all on my end. Ayala, if you have anything else.
No, thank you for taking the time and thinking about the weather. I think that's the first step to be more climate resilient and making sure that, everyone are safe. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, that is all the time that we do have for today. Thank you to everyone again for taking the time to listen in, and a big thank you to Ayala and Kelly for sharing your insights with us today. As a reminder, the recording of this webinar will be sent to everyone tomorrow via the email used to register with. We hope you'll join us again next time. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.